St. Martin of Tours. St. Martin originally was born in Hungary and was a soldier, eventually became a bishop. He was very dedicated, and there are so many stories associated with Martin that, in a sense, fulfill the scriptures that we're reading today, especially that first reading from Isaiah, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me." It's one of my favorite readings. That first reading was also at my first Mass 1,000 years ago, but it's certainly something that inspired Martin. As a soldier, he became a Christian, and as a Christian was very devoted, and as a very devoted leader, he was influenced by another great theologian, Hilary of Poitiers, and eventually becomes a bishop. But the role of a bishop in the 4th century is different than our bishops are. They were far wider. They had no specific diocese like we have geographically. So he was the bishop of the area, and of course he was a great educator. But as a teacher, his role of bishop and soldier are sort of mixed in. One of the great stories, of course, you all know this, but I have to say it because it's the key story of St. Martin. He was on his horse, and he had a cloak, like soldiers would, and he saw a cold man over by the side of the road. And he had a big warm cloak, and the man had nothing. So he took his cloak and he cut it in half, and he gave half to the man to cover himself. Nice gesture. But at night, he had a dream. And the dream was Jesus was talking about Martin. And Jesus says, "I was alongside the road, and Martin gave me his cloak to cover me." His devotion to Christ grew fantastically after that dream. It's how God speaks to us, and I think dreams are important. I don't think we have to rely on dreams, but dreams are deeply rooted in our subconscious, and they sort of rise when we're sleeping, and if we are accurate, we can remember some of our dreams. Well, that dream was significant for Martin, and eventually the cloak becomes so significant, the remainder of the cloak that he wore after his death becomes a relic. Okay, they save it. They save it, and of course, he's the founder of the first monastery, one of the early monasteries. So they take that cloak and they put it in that monastery. And they put it in a section of the monastery, and they name it the capellan, that's where the cloak is, okay? Well, I like etymology. The word for the cloak, the capellan, which is a covering, like the Capuchins wear the big hoods, became associated with the architecture. So the architecture of where the cloak was preserved was called capellan. Eventually it was changed to capel, and eventually chapel. So that's where we get the word chapel from. So from St. Martin's cloak, preserved as a relic. The saints give us remnants of their lives. In a few days, we'll be celebrating Mother Cabrini, and here at our parish, we'll be having an international brunch. Everybody's invited to bring food of your ethnic backgrounds. And I think the United Nations and this area is so filled with diversity of people. Universality of our faith comes together when we pray here in this church. So as we celebrate on Sunday, after the Masses, the international brunch, we're going to be thinking of Mother Cabrini, our patroness. A statue of her here in the church. There's another statue of her in the foyer. And of course, her relic is here too. And not far from here, very close to here in Fort Tryon Park, is where she's buried in the chapel, the shrine of Mother Cabrini. Saints give us parts of their lives that we can latch on to. Not necessarily cloth or relics, but they give us examples of their lives that we can hold on to. Martin's charity was rewarded by a dream. But I think the dream came to Martin before he took the cloak and gave it to the man. Because what he was inspired with are words like this that come from the scriptures. He was inspired by Christ in him, like Jesus says at the Last Supper. He's talking to God the Father. It's a very long dissertation in John's Gospel at the Last Supper. But it repeats, but it emphasizes the oneness that God has with his Son Jesus, and the oneness Jesus has with us, and the goal of God's oneness being in us, the followers of Jesus. So what the saints give us is the living out of the Scriptures. Cabrini does it in her life as a saint who went from coast to coast in South America and North America, bringing education, healing through her hospitalizations and hospital foundations and schools to children and of immigrants. And she didn't limit her work to Italian immigrants, although she was Italian and she came from Italy to serve the Italian immigrants. She continued her work to all immigrants. And we, of course, today in our society, we're flooded with the beauty of immigration. So we have people from every nation here in our own area, our own geographic area, our own church. And it's such a beautiful experience to know that we are united with them as one universal church, just as Christ is united to all of us as a church. And our goal is to celebrate that universality as Christians, as Roman Catholics. We'll do it Sunday as together with food, but we do it every time we come together at the Mass. And even today, we have celebrated our universality. Father Ben comes from Slovakia, again, emphasizing the universality of our church. Martin was one man, 4th century, whose life really shows us what the phrase, "the Spirit of the Lord is upon me," is all about. And now it's up to us to continue the Spirit, Martin, the Spirit of Cabrini, but the Spirit of Christ. That the Spirit of Christ is in us, and we speak to the Father, ask him to increase that Spirit more and more, so we go out to our families and friends, we're one with them. And we can love, we can share, and we can celebrate our Catholic faith.